Today's subject is about death and especially the fear of dying. Death is something that everybody is afraid of. It's something we don't like to think about. It's something that we don't really understand. How could we understand it when nobody has ever come back? But the one thing we know is that nobody escapes. Nobody, in all the history of humanity, ever has escaped death. If they had, they would be around to talk about it, and they're not. So it's something that is coming for everybody, regardless of what you believe happens afterwards, if anything. It's still coming for you. Death is the one thing that awaits at the end of all of our lives, but it cheats us by taking so many thousands, millions, and billions of different forms, so many different ways for it to arrive. A car accident, a satellite falling on your head, choking on a piece of food, an illness, a disease. So we try to avoid, to beat, to find ways to overcome all of these different objects of death as though somehow that will stop the fact of us dying, but it won't. So what the Buddha teaches about this is that the best way, in fact the only way to really save yourself from this sense of danger of dying, danger of losing everything, is to be smarter than death, making oneself ready for it. In fact, there are many ways in which the whole practice that we do can be seen in terms of this as a preparation for the moment of death, to live in such a way as to have no regrets, that if you die in 10 seconds you will not have regret for having done something wrong or for having neglected to do good. At another level, it's also developing right understanding, which means to develop the understanding that death is only to be feared if we have something to lose. With right understanding, we see that what we lose was never ours to lose anyway when we die. So if our car, to give an example that I used in the previous video, if our body, for example, is a rented car, which it is, it's taken away from us, we like it or not, then it's wrong understanding to believe that it's ours and to hang on to it as though it belonged to us. But if we develop the correct understanding that actually it's a rented car and I'm going to have to get it back, okay, I'm ready to give it back whenever it needs to be given back. So one who develops right view, right understanding in Dhamma is not afraid to die because he has practiced already to let go. He has practiced already to give up what was never his to begin with. Also, one specific Dhamma that one can meditate on is mindfulness of death. So this I can probably give more detail on it in another video, but essentially to practice mindfulness in such a way as to be ready to die in one breath, or in the time it takes to swallow one mouthful of food. So in regard to this sense of preparing oneself for death instead of fearing it and running away from it, we had two stories. One is an analogy that death is like a cliff, which is at the end of the path on which every type of animal walks. So it's like you imagine all of the animals in the world walking along their path, and each of them, one by one, they arrive at this cliff. And they see others falling off the cliff in advance of them, and yet they can't help but arrive at this same cliff and fall off the end, not knowing what will happen to them at the bottom. So all of them are terrified, and all of them are trying to avoid it somehow, or trying to convince themselves that it's only the others who are going to fall off and not them. But each of them, one by one, they reach the end of the cliff and they fall off. And then it comes the turn of the young baby eaglet, the young eagle. And this eaglet is not afraid of the cliff edge, because it's the first time in his life that he's going to have the chance to fly. So he's saying, finally, it's what I've been practicing for all my life. I've been working on my wing exercises, I've been eating plenty of food to be strong. Now finally I get to actually fly for real. So he's not afraid. For him, this is the moment that he's been waiting for. So when he arrives at the edge of the cliff, he is just full of joy. And when he takes off into the air and soars higher than everybody else, this is the moment when he is free. Now he can go wherever he wants. Now he can fly to the end of the earth and come back if he wants. He can fly above the clouds. He can go near the ocean. So this is the moment of his freedom, when he takes flight, when he changes from being like the other animals into the most majestic creature the one who has wings. So this baby eagle illustrates somebody who is a serious practitioner of Dhamma, whose aim is to be Sotapanna or higher, to go out of suffering. He is like the baby eagle in that for him, the moment of dying is not something to be feared. For the whole life, he's been preparing himself for just this, practicing to let go. Now he gets to really fully let go of everything for real. And in letting go, he also gains a much higher freedom, a higher gift. The fact that he becomes a flying eagle at this point, it also illustrates the fact that at the moment of dying, it's very common. The Buddha mentioned several times, and it's quite common to read stories about people who see Dhamma at the moment of death. So to become Sotapanna or higher, just in case you didn't see Dhamma before then, which you should if you practice correctly. The second story about an eagle is the story of an eagle who, it's not related to the first story, it's different. So in this story, the eagle lives 50 years, approximately, and there is a crow who can live for 300 years. And so the eagle is very impressed that this crow has lived for so long, and he wants to know what's his secret. So he watches the crow and figures out how he's going to kidnap him, until one day he comes and catches the crow in his claws, just as he's settling on his perch in the tree. And the crow is struggling and trying to get away, and the eagle takes him away to his own perch on the top of the cliff and threatens to eat him if he doesn't tell him what is the secret of his long life. So finally, being threatened with death, the crow agrees. He says, okay, I will show you. So then the eagle lets him go, and the crow flies over the mountain, over the valley, over the river, until finally he comes to the sewers of the city. And there's a place where the sewer is open, and all of the gunk and slime of the sewer is coming out, and the crow starts to drink it and eat it. The eagle is looking on, horrified and disgusted, and the crow tells him, come, eat. It's very good. This is your medicine. This is what makes me live so long. And the eagle is completely disgusted, and he says to the crow, how could you think that I would eat such a thing? How could I think that I would stoop so low? Do I want to live 300 years in order to be able to feed every day on this? To be one who frequents the lowest, darkest, dankest places of the world? No. I am another kind of being. I am the one who flies above all the world, who can swoop down to grab the salmon in his claws. I am the king of the birds. And so he flies away, and he's happy to die at age 50 instead of living for 300 years, even though now he knows the secret. He doesn't want to live like that. So in this story, the crow illustrates the person who is so afraid of dying and so desperate to hang on to his life, knowing nothing else and having no faith in anything, that he just will do anything to continue to live, even if it's the most miserable life. He will do anything to just prolong his life a little bit longer. But the eagle is like the one who values something else. The value is not on the length he can live, but the heights to which he can fly. And so this is like the one who, as I was telling in the beginning, somebody who practices Dhamma, he sees that he knows that death is coming. So he doesn't try to deny it, doesn't try to run away from it, doesn't try to escape from it. He knows that this is going to be true no matter what he does. So instead of trying to run away from the thing that is inevitable anyway, he says, okay, let me use every moment as an opportunity to live the best way I can, which for the practitioner of Dhamma is to practice to let go, to detach himself from everything, to remove anything that would stick in his mind if he were to die at that moment. It doesn't mean that he will just throw away his life for nothing. Absolutely not. It's very important to make that distinction. He's not throwing away his life, but for him, the value of his life is not just on the mere fact of existing, which is common to all the worms in the ground, all the beetles in the air, all the fruit flies that are buzzing around your fruit. They all have the same merit of existing. But what gives value to the life in the eyes of somebody who is practicing Dhamma, whose one's aim is Dhamma, is really just that this life is an opportunity to practice. It has no value on its own. So the value of the life equals the practice that you do in it. He considers that any moment, any second that is not used to practice, to go up, to bring yourself higher, is wasted. So for one who is a practitioner, it is much, much more valuable to live for just one more night while working determinedly and full of faith and full of effort to practice the Buddha's teaching. Is worth much, much more than living 100 years while not working on oneself, not changing anything. To one who is a practitioner, it's kind of useless to try really hard to do all kinds of effort to prolong the life just for the sake of having a longer life. He sees it in the same way as the eagle sees the crow who is stooping to eat dung in order to live 300 years. So death can be like falling off a cliff, or like the moment when you take flight. It can be something to be feared that one tries to avoid at any cost, or it can be that you practice to be ready for it. But no matter how you see it, it's still coming for you anyway. So on that cheerful note, I will end for today.